pick up the opening of the meaning of Kedusha, and then we'll go back and forth on the Piyutim. All right.
Okay.
Then I go ahead and the shofar blowing also.
Yeah.
So here are my thoughts. For what it's worth, column. So today the reading was focused on Yitzhak. Yesterday was split between Yitzhak and Ishmael. And it's very interesting that on the first day, so I'm stepping back a day. The central figures are Hagar and Ishmael. Hagar is the second wife, concubine, whatever the status may have been, and Hagar, the fruit of that union. Sick Sarah is not able to give birth, as we read, not till very great age. And of course, this is important because it leads into the binding of Isaac, which is the core theme for Rosh Hashanah. But we may ask, why didn't the sages put the binding itself right on the first day? Well, it's the central theme. Why did they put the story of Hagar and Ishmael in between? They could have skipped it. They could have just focused on the reading about here's the promise of Abraham, chapters before. You will have child Isaac, the angels come. Why not just go from that straight to birth? And then why have this interlude? What does it have to teach us? What can we learn about this with Rosh Hashanah from the lesson? So it's very interesting that there's a very strong parallel between the people involved in the stories. Right? On the first day, Ishmael, well, he's born quite some time before. In our reading, Yitzhak is born. In both cases, a promise is fulfilled. Ishmael, God says, I will have this child. Ishmael, he will be a great nation. For Yitzhak, you shall be your progeny. Both of them suffer. Both children suffer. Ishmael is expelled. Yitzhak is bound, almost killed. Ishmael nearly dies in his case of thirst because he's in the desert. In Yitzhak's case, he nearly dies with the knife of his father. In both stories, an angel of the Lord calls out with a message of hope. The angel calls to the mother, the angel calls to the father. Notice the parallels. And in both cases, we have a theme of opening one's eyes. Hagar has been blinded by tears. She can't see what's in front of her. God opens her eyes and she sees a well of water. The child is saved. Abraham is scared for his child and what he's doing. The angel says, do not, and he opens his eyes and he sees a ram. Right? So you can see how the two stories parallel each other. So we ask ourselves, why are these two events structured in parallel? What is the Torah trying to teach us? It's teaching us something about Ishmael, as well as Isaac, Yitzhak. Now, we'll talk a little bit more in a second about how Ishmael appears in, how Yitzhak and Ishmael appear in Islamic tradition, because I think we have historic ramifications. But we ask, why is it Ishmael is expelled in the first place? And so the rabbis have their commentaries, according to common midrash, playing on the word Yitzhak, mitzachek, right? Because Ishmael is mitzachek, but Isaac is Yitzhak. We have a word play. So the word mitzachek, playing military games like bloodshed. Mitzachek, idolatry, was used in the Bible. This is the way the words are used in the Bible. And also sexual immorality. So these are accusations placed against Ishmael. Others say, no, mitzachek is because Ishmael is the firstborn. He sees the celebration around Yitzhak and he's laughing because he says, well, I'm the firstborn. I get all the privileges. That's the Torah is going to say later on. It's actually going to make a law based on that. So that's the laugh. And that's why Sarah says, Lo yash ben ha'ama yachadim b'ni, the son of this maid will not inherit together with my son. So maybe he's laughing because he thinks it's his portion, not because he's a wicked person, but because the law is that it should be mine. Finally, ask the question, well, why is Ishmael spared? Ultimately, why is Ishmael spared? I mean, we're told when he's about to be born, before he's born, God tells Abraham, listen, he's going to be a wild man, Pera Adam, wild man, Yad Kol Adam. Oh, his hand is going to be against everyone, and he's going to have his hand against everyone. Man of violence. Why should he be spared? And he becomes a Rovek Kashet. He becomes the man of the bow, military, marauder. Well, the answer is, God answers and he says, Ba'asher hu sham. I saw him, Ba'asher hu sham. I see him as he is. I see him as he is. What's obvious, I see him as he is. Why? Superfluous word. Torah is written like a telegraph. If there's a superfluous word, you pay for the telegraph. You know, the old days, every word, every letter. Why superfluous letter? Asher Sham, verse 17, it says, well, Sham, is that here in this particular spot in the middle of the desert? Or is Sham an issue of personality and human essence? So Rashi quotes Talmud, Rosh Hashanah, says, a man is judged for the acts he does at that moment. Each one of us is judged for what we are doing right now. Not what we did in the past, maybe that can be undone, not for what we will do in the future. What are we doing at this moment? Each moment stands by itself. So the angels argue, they say, we're God. This man's descendants will try to kill your children of Israel by thirst in the desert, and you prepare a well for him. How can it be? And so he asks at this point, he says to the angels, God asks the angels, at this very moment, is he righteous or wicked? Is he righteous or wicked? Is he doing anything bad? No. If he's not doing anything bad, then he's righteous. He's a tzaddik. If he's a tzaddik, he doesn't deserve to die. So God says, I judge him by his actions now. So that is the meaning of Asher Hu Sham. So this is a very important cardinal principle of Judaism, that we are judged by our actions, each moment, moment by moment. So that makes a case not just for Ishmael, but for every one of us. None of us is guilt-free, right? But like Dr. Ishmael said, we're on the 51 margin. Every action is the one that can determine, right? Every action. And hence we should always consider ourselves. At this moment, we're righteous. Next moment, what can we do to prevent ourselves from falling off the cliff? That's the story then, not just of Ishmael and Isaac, but of, to borrow a term from medieval play, Yerderman, everyone. Every human being. It's the human existence, the human story. Well, I just want to go a little bit of an aside because we also have this imagery of, well, we've got three religions that feed off of this story. We ourselves, children of Yitzchak. And we see ourselves as the children who were redeemed in spirit. For Christians read Yitzchak as a parallel or precursor to Jesus. Right? Isaac carries the wood on his back. It's a precursor of the cross that Jesus carries. So that's an example. And just as Isaac is Abraham's beloved son, so in Christian texts, right? Jesus is God's beloved son and offered up as an akedah. That's the Christian metaphor. Well, what about for Islam? You know, in modern Israeli parlance, we often refer to Arabs as Bnei Dodim, cousins. Isaac and Ishmael are cousins, right? Same, right? Uncles, grandfather, right? And that's why I like to talk about the Abrahamic Accords in terms of bringing Jews and Arabs together, Israelis and Arabs together in the Middle East. So it becomes a great framework for these treaties going on with the Emirates, for example. But it's very interesting. You know, everybody wants to be the Jew in the middle. Don't necessarily like Jews, but they want to take the place of Jews. So in the Islamic sources, it is not Isaac who is offered up, but it is Ishmael. And so there's a lot of traditions, both in the text of the Quran and in Hadith, in which Abraham and Isaac, Ishmael are constantly going back and forth down to Mecca, where he is settled, or great story about his wife. Abraham has questions about his wife. He sends the wife, he gets a better wife, all sorts of things in that same sense. So I'm reflecting that they knew so many Jewish tales, and they're incorporated not just into the Quran, but into the Hadith. So here's the way it is in the Quran, Surah 37. He said, Abraham talks to, in general, discussion with Abraham and God, and he says, I will go to my Lord, he will surely guide me. Oh, my Lord, grant me a righteous son. Right? That's Abraham's prayer. Right? So he gave him the good news of a forbearing son. The English translation, forbearing, I'm not sure what the Arabic is, meaning a righteous son. And then when the son reached the age of serious work with him, right, an adult, my son, I've seen in a vision that I shall offer thee in sacrifice, which happens to be also what the Midrash says about Isaac, because if they count the dates correctly, Isaac is already 37, right? Serious adult. What is thy view? And the son says, notice it doesn't say any name. Oh, Father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah so wills, one of the steadfast, right? Loyal, steadfast. So they submitted to Allah, and he laid him prostrate on his forehead for sacrifice, and we called out to him, "O Abraham, Abraham." When they said the we, that's the angels speaking, just as in here it's an angel of the Lord. Thou hast already fulfilled the vision. I saw that you did not withhold your son. That's parallel language. And thus, indeed, we reward those who do right, for this was a clear trial. Nisa, Abraham. What's the opening lines? Abraham, Nisa, Elohim, Nisa, Abraham. God tried Abraham. There's that word, trial. And we ransomed him with a momentous sacrifice, right? This is the ram instead of the ram instead of Isaac. This momentous sacrifice. We left for him among generations to come in later times, peace and salutation to Abraham. Thus, indeed, we reward those who do right, who is one of our believing servants. But it's not yet clear. Are they referring to Ishmael or Isaac? Then there's a line after that sort of gives them intimation that afterwards Isaac is born, a prophet, one of the righteous, and we bless him in Isaac, and some of their kids are good, some of their kids are not so good. Right? That's the complaint that the Quran has about the Jews. They don't always do what they're supposed to do. But the implication here that Isaac is born after this event from their reading. Right? But what are we getting at? It's this sense here that, what can I tell you? Everybody wants to be a Jew, except when there's crunch time. Right? The early pilgrims who came and settled in New England did not need Jews because they copied the biblical laws as they saw going back to our texts. We are Israel. We're Israel. And they put Hebrew at Yale University, Hebrew University, commencements are all in Hebrew. There's even a story that says that when the Americans declared revolution against the English, they decided they would get rid of the English language also and take Hebrew because everybody had to learn Hebrew to graduate school. And so they knew more Hebrew than most of us Jews did. They didn't need Jews, right? Everybody. But maybe, right, besides being surpassed in their imaginations, maybe we can hang on to this as a way of pulling ourselves together, bringing ourselves together, remembering we had one father, Abraham. You believe in him. You believe in him. We believe in him as our progenitor, as our predecessor. Can we not come together on this? Now, I that's my hope and prayer. We can use terms. They want to say Zionists, we say Zionists, Israelis, Palestinians, Philistine, Canada. Pick the terms you want. Let's get together. We have our place in the land of Israel. You're here. Let's work ourselves out to get things together. That's our prayer. That's our prayer for this season. So those are my thoughts.